My name is Tabu Osusa. I'm the founding director of Tabu Music. Kenya has got talent. But then, if that's the case, one wonders why it is the music by young musicians from Nigeria and South Africa that dominates our airwaves and places of entertainment. Somehow, the older generation, which is my generation, dropped the baton in the early 1990s. And the current generation did not stop to pick it up. They simply kept running on. With this generational disconnect, young musicians have been forced to look up to musicians from the Western Hemisphere for guidance, since they have no local role models. Some people point out that the current Kenyan musicians are doing well, with some touring extensively across the globe. That could be true, but it is important to note that one cannot measure or judge a country by the success of a few individual musicians. I know there are many institutions and music academies in Nairobi. They are doing a great job in teaching young musicians how to become excellent vocalists and instrumentalists. However, voice coaching alone and expertise in the art of playing musical instruments cannot be the only solution to our problems. I believe popular traditional rhythms such as taarab, mwomboko, chakacha, omutibo, and the benga beat, which propelled Kenyan music across Africa in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, is where the answer lies. In as much as there are emerging new sounds on the continent, such as electronic music and house music, it's imperative that we ensure the continuity of old genres. For example, if I had to give the USA, I think hip-hop is probably the biggest genre now, but that did not stop country music, rock, jazz from growing as well. So that's the problem we have in this country, that once hip-hop came to the scene, the other genres kind of stagnated. We must encourage and teach the younger generations through master classes how to sing African songs in a traditional manner without using Western harmonies and nuances. Over the years, I've noted that whenever young Kenyans sing in Kiswahili or Kikuyu, Luo, or in other language, they use an exotic accent as if those languages are foreign to them. However, this is not the case with the youth from other African countries. During my travels, I've interacted with many African musicians. For instance, I've met young, beautiful South African girls with heavy American accent. However, when they get on stage to perform, they drop that acquired accent and revert to the clicking languages of Southern Africa. We need to do the same. I believe it's about time that Kenyan musicians embraced our identity and stamped it on whatever genre you want to perform. Because actually, as I say again, that music really does not have a language. You can still sing in English, by the way, but still sound very, very African. So we're talking about master classes. A typical example of a successful master class between a mentor and an apprentice is that of the Japanese lady who came to Kenya. She's known as Eriko Mukayama, or Anyango in Japan as she's called. She traveled to a remote village in Alego where she lived for close to a year, learning how to play the nyatiti from an old nyatiti master known as Okumu Korengo. Over time, she has mastered the skill of playing the 8-stringed instrument, becoming the first professional female nyatiti player in the world. So far, he has fused nyatiti with jazz, and she's ranked as one of the top musicians in Japan. So our varied identity is what we must use to make us different from others in the continent. This concept has been tried, tested, and proven to work in other regions. Therefore, I do not see why Kenya should be an exception. I followed an interview by a Beninois singer, Angelique Kidjo, where she said that as a young girl, she only sang traditional music. Later, when she was a little older, she got introduced to all kinds of music genres from across the globe. She went on to state that whenever she sang Western music, including American jazz and funk, she always introduced a traditional African feel to her renditions. The jazz culture down in South Africa thrived because musicians such as Jonas Ngwangwa, Yuma Sekela, Dola Brand, and Miriam Makeba cleverly were able to interpret international jazz sounds using local rhythms. This created the unique African jazz, which can easily be distinguished from the traditional jazz sounds of New Orleans. In Ethiopia, Dr. Mulatu Astarte created Ethio jazz by fusing Ethiopian traditional rhythms with Western jazz. Interestingly, the current generation have taken it to another level by adding electronic mix to the genre. Back in West Africa, Fela and Akulapo Kuti was successfully able to blend juju music from Nigeria with Western funk and jazz to create Afrobeat, which begat the current Afro-pop craze sweeping across the African continent. For a long time, Rumba music has been the dominant sound across the sub-Saharan Africa, with the main protagonists of the genre being the Congolese. And this is due to their consistency and unapologetically being themselves.